Welcome to the Cathedral Check-in. My name is Donald Hunt, and I'm the Director of Music at Christ Church Cathedral. And I'm here with David Stratkauskas, Artistic Director of Vox Humana Chamber Choir, as well as Ross Bliss, our Vicar. And we want to talk to you a little bit about some of the events that the Cathedral is putting on surrounding the Halloween weekend and All Souls Day. So Ross, I thought I'd start with you because you're a spiritual person, and maybe, I wonder if you can talk about some of the spiritual aspects of the intersection between Halloween and All Souls and how we ended up doing all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the entire intersection of what people understand as pagan rites and religious rites is very interesting. I think the argument as to who started it or who came up with it first is kind of irrelevant, because I think the real question is, why wouldn't you ladder on to existing patterns and practices? And they both arise out of the people and out of the people's needs and aspirations. So really, I don't see that as being problematic at all. And it makes complete sense that you have significant rites at two times of the year, planting and harvesting. Because as Joseph Campbell, the famous mythologist, pointed out, food, the chief food element in any geographic location or place, is elemental and just fundamental to the spiritual practices of ancient peoples, indigenous peoples, and in our own way, us, right? Literally, we don't think of it that way because we can go down to Save On Foods and buy what we want. But literally, if planting and harvesting didn't go well, you died. Right? And so that automatically links the harvest, especially with survival, with life and death. So it makes sense intuitively to have very, very significant religious festivals at the time of harvest. And so this is sort of where Halloween came about. It became a folk practice. Costumes probably got translated over here from Irish immigrants and things like that. Like, you can look this up on Wikipedia, that part's all out there, but I think the tie-in is really, really obvious. And I just want to read something from our own book of alternative services to underscore the importance of death and death rites. The origins of funeral practices, whether burial or other forms of reverent disposal of bodies of those who have died, are lost in the furthest mists of human history. Many of the oldest remains of our most ancient ancestors are their burial sites, and it is not impossible that the appearance of rites associated with mourning and the final disposal of bodies of the dead mark the emergence of humanity as we understand the term. So I think that's really something. Literally, the oldest archaeological evidence of human habitation and activity are funeral-related things. So this is deep, deep stuff for us. So I think it's completely natural that we celebrate it and signify it.
And of course, we do that at the time when the seasons are changing, and it's a time when the Celts talk about it being as a thin time, right? It's a time yes. when heaven is kissing earth, or if you will, on the sort of more ghoulish side of things, when all the ghoulies come out to scare us again, right?
It's a perfect intersection.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things happening that we're doing around this observance, and we've got a lot of stuff to talk about. So the first sort of thing is something we're calling Festival of the Dead, and that's a pairing of two silent films with musical accompaniment. And the first silent film is on Saturday, October 29th, and that is Phantom of the Opera, the 1925 silent version of the Phantom of the Opera. And we're inviting a very special guest out from New York City. His name is David Briggs, and he's a fabulous organist and improviser. And he happens to be the artist in residence at the Church of St. John the Divine in New York. And so he'll be making up a soundtrack to Phantom of the Opera on the spot. And that's on October 29th. Now on All Saints Day, David, with his choir Vox Humana, will be presenting a film called The Passion of Joan of Arc. So David, why don't you tell us what this is all about? Why is that different from just a normal concert? How does that fit into our festival?
Well, sure. How is it different than a normal choral concert? Is, I guess, sort of obvious in that it is actually a silent film with a composed score. The silent film itself, The Passion of Joan of Arc, dates from, I think, 1928, and it's considered one of the seminal silent films of all time, one of the seminal films of all time. Carl Theodor Dreyer, if I say his name right, is the director, and or was the director. The film was lost. It would have originally been done. I think the original score for what might have been played with it exists. There have been various attempts to make soundtracks that go with it, because as a silent film, of course, like with the Phantom of the Opera, there's no music connected to the film on the track itself. There's been the film itself was lost and rediscovered in the 1980s in its original version. The version that was published back in 1928 was heavily censored by the church and the government in France.
Interesting that we're playing it in a church.
Sorry?
It's interesting that it's now being played in a church this time.
Well, actually, it is interesting because, I mean, Joan of Arc, I mean, she was canonized by the Roman Catholic Church, so she's a saint, and All Saints' Day, there's that connection there. But the Passion of Joan of Arc, the film, it concentrates not on telling the whole story of her life, but on the moments of her trial when she was captured by the English faction that was in collaboration with one of the French factions. So it goes through her trial, and there's obvious parallels to the Passion of Christ. In her suffering there. Dreyer said about the film what makes it interesting for him, and I think what makes it interesting for us are the human elements. He says it's meant to reveal Joan as the victim of one of the most terrible of all perversions, the perversion of a divine principle in its passage through the minds of men. He uses that term then, whether they be church, government, or what you will. And it really, it's an extraordinary film. And then when it's paired with Richard Einhorn's score, where he explores the implications around feminism, around gender, around around nationalism too, I suppose, in his texts, it makes it quite powerful, really remarkably powerful. So choir plus an orchestra plus silent film.
Yeah, fantastic. And the name of the soundtrack is Voices of Light, right? So,
Voices of Light, and the composer Richard Einhorn.
So it fits quite well, of course, on All Saints' Day, because we've just the night before. Well, nothing's happening here on Halloween or All Hallows Eve, but that's kind of a time of darkness. And then the church is full of these contrasts, of course, light and dark, night and day, death and life, and so all Voices of Light for All Saints' Day. So Ross, we've been spending some time hearing about these concerts with the silent films, but the Cathedral also offers services, of course, where there are opportunities to memorialize departed loved ones. What can you say about some of those?
Well, there's two opportunities coming up. The first one would be the Sunday Evensong on October 30th. We sort of swerved from All Saints over to All Souls for that service. And we've been inviting people who have lost someone in the last couple of years, or even any time before that, to come, to submit names to us by calling the office, or to, at a Sunday service, to give them to the stewards at the back, or to just come to that service and just hear the names read. So what we do is we read aloud the names at the moment of intercessory prayer. We read aloud the names of these people that have been submitted to us at that service, and it's quite a profound moment. The other thing that you can do is we're having the Duraflay Requiem, which you can talk about, I'm sure, a wonderful piece of music. So it's an entire mass setting, a Requiem mass. It'll be complete with all the bells and whistles and incense. We must warn the public about that. And people are invited to come to that service, and we're going to have a thing called a Tree of Remembrance, which will be a bare tree set up, and we'll have little name tags, little luggage tags and pens, and we will invite people to inscribe the names of their loved ones, their lost ones, those they love and see no more, on these little tags, and hang them on the Tree of Remembrance at that service. So those are two opportunities coming up. So that would be October 30th for Evensong, and November the 2nd for the Duruflay Requiem.
And just to clarify, for October 30th, if you know someone who has died in the previous year and has had a funeral at the cathedral or is a parishioner here, they don't need to do anything, right?
No, because we're reaching out to them, and we have those names already, so those will be automatically included in that list. So I should mention the times. That's 4 p.m. on Sunday, October 30th, and 7 p.m. on I guess it's Tuesday, November 2nd.
Great, thanks. So I'll just run through again what it is that we want you to remember here. So it's key dates: Saturday the 29th, David Briggs improvising on the soundtrack to Rupert Julian's 1925 silent film, The Phantom of the Opera. Tickets for that are available via the Cathedral's website. On Sunday, October 30th, our All Souls Evensong at 4 p.m. And obviously that's just a free will offering, so you don't need to sign up or anything. Tuesday, November 1st, Vox Humana, under the direction of David Stratkauskas, sings Richard Einhorn's Voices of Light to accompany the 1928 classic film, The Passion of Joan of Arc. And again, tickets for that are available via the Cathedral's website. And if you're interested in attending both of those silent films, you can purchase a festival pass, and that gets you a little bit of a discount rather than buying both tickets separately. And then the next day, Wednesday, November 2nd, it's our All Souls Day Requiem Eucharist, featuring Duruflay's Requiem and an opportunity to hang the name of your loved one on our tree of remembrance. So again, a free will offering for that. David, Ross, thank you very much for spending this time with me and talking about this.
Pleasure.